guys. Welcome to the Daily, the Practical, the Holy, where we talk about daily practices you can do wherever you are, no matter who you are, no matter when you are, to help improve your awareness of God, your relationship with Jesus Christ, your conscious contact with the Holy Spirit. And the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about how to talk. And that's a spiritual practice on how to talk. So I encourage you to check out the past two videos and catch up to where we're at. And today we're going to talk about how to talk when you're in conflict. There are practices that you can use when you're in conflict with someone else, in a disagreement with someone else. There are practices you can use to help move this conversation forward in a healthy way, in a deep way, so that you begin understanding yourself, you begin understanding the other person, and the other person begins understanding you. And through that, you begin finding the presence of God in the midst of that. And the good news is, you don't need to be an expert. You can do these things right off the bat, right out of the gate. And so we're going to go through them. And the first thing I want to talk about is the first thing that you need to do when you are in a difficult conversation, or when you're in conflict, or you know that there's a subject that you're going to bring up with another person, or maybe a couple other people. You know it's going to be tense. The first thing to remember is that you are in a disagreement. You are not in a fight. And there's a huge difference. Growing up, I thought that every disagreement was a fight. And if you enter a fight, what's the goal? The goal is to win a fight. That's the goal. You don't want to draw, you want to win. Oftentimes we get in disagreements or conflicts, and automatically our brain goes to, I want to win. And so we do whatever we can to win. We have to understand that we are not in a fight. The goal is not to win. In fact, when you are in a disagreement, when you are in a conflict, the goal is understanding. You need to know that what you're thinking needs to be understood by the other person, but then you also need to understand what the other person's thinking. So the goal is seeking understanding. It's not being right. It's not proving the other person wrong. It's finding understanding. So that's the first important position that you need to take and think about before you enter in that conversation. If you're entering a conversation and you're thinking, I'm in it to win it, then you need to take a step back and you need to take a break. Because what happens is, when we are in a disagreement, a few things happen to our body, physiologically happen. When you begin in a heated debate, what happens is your blood pressure begins to build, your heart rate begins to increase. And what happens after a certain level, once your blood pressure and your heart rate reach a certain level, your brain, the frontal part of your brain, the cerebral cortex of your brain, it literally shuts off. It says, I'm going to bed. This is too much for me. And so once that happens, you begin thinking with the more primal part of your brain, or the fight or flight part of your brain. So you can't even make rational decisions once your blood pressure, once your heart rate gets to a certain level. And you can feel that happening in a debate or sometimes an argument, right? You can feel yourself getting hot. You can feel your heart beating. When you feel that, recognize your body, your brain is shutting down. Take a break. Because what's going to happen is you're going to go into fight or flight. And we've seen that. You've been in a disagreement maybe before where you have decided, I'm going to do everything I can to win this, and afterwards you're thinking, oh my goodness, what have I said? Or, if you're not the fighter, you're the flighter, right? You've gotten a disagreement where it's gotten so much you just slammed the door and took off, right? So the goal is to avoid that. We're not in a fight. We are in a disagreement, and we are seeking not victory, we are seeking understanding. Once you have that, we can move on to the practices that you can do. And the first practice is use I statements. We're seeking understanding. So it's not about accusing someone or blaming someone. So we need to use I statements. And what this looks like is I think or I feel. So one of my favorite examples I like to use is with a couple and washing dishes. Because who likes to wash dishes? If you've been in a relationship long enough, usually it comes down to one person. That's their job, or that's the expectation. But say you're in a relationship, you're coming home and the dishes aren't done, the dishes aren't done, the dishes aren't done. It's easy to say, you never do the dishes. There's a couple things wrong with that. First, you're starting with the word you. That's a fighting word. When you enter a conflict, you enter a disagreement, and you start saying, you do this, or you don't do that, or you think this, or you think that, you are entering into a fight. Put the brakes on. What we're trying to do is seek understanding. So you want to let the other person know what is going on in you when you see those dishes not done, right? So it looks more like this. When I see the dishes not done, I feel like you don't care about this relationship. Or when I see the dishes not done, I think that now it's my job to do it and I feel overwhelmed. Or when I see the dishes not done, this is what I think, or this is what I am feeling. And so what you're doing is you're letting the other person get a glimpse at understanding how you feel, because that's the goal. Remember, understanding. And once you share that, then the other person has an opportunity to respond. But as you're sharing, I think, I feel, a couple things you need to avoid while doing that, because they're fighting words. One of the words that we need to avoid is the word but. The word but is a fighting word. If you say, I know you're busy, but you've just eliminated that I know you're busy part, right? We hear people say this all the time. I love you, but what you've just done, you've negated the whole I love you. The only thing the person's going to hear is the next part. If you use the word but, they're only going to hear the bad part of that news, that bad part of the sentence. A better word to use is and. I love you, and I feel frustrated when the dishes aren't done. That sounds a lot different and is heard a lot different than I love you, but you never do the dishes, right? You avoid the word but, use the word and. I love you, and I need the dishes done. I love you, and it's frustrating when the laundry's not done. I love you, and the way you're thinking about this is different than the way I think about it. So that's very important. Also, avoid the word never and always. You never wash the dishes. Well, that's probably not true. There's probably at least one point in their life they wash the dishes, right? You never listen. You always ignore me. Even if you feel like in that moment that's true, it's a fighting word. The minute you accuse someone of always or never, they have to now defend themselves. So now you're no longer understanding each other. They don't understand you. You're not understanding them. Avoid those words but. Avoid those words always and never. And use the word I. And as much as you can, try to avoid the word you. You can't always avoid that word, but use it seldom because it's a fighting word. It's an accusatory word. Again, you're trying to get the person to understand you. So once you've made your statement, I feel this, it is now the job of the other person. Or if someone starts off saying, I feel this, it is your job now to seek understanding. That's called the repeating part. So when you say, I feel frustrated, the other person in the conversation, they want to repeat what they hear. Because oftentimes what we say, an other person hears something different because of what's going on. Again, we're seeking understanding. If we understand each other, we can get the heart of what's going on. We can get the heart of where we see God working in this relationship. I feel frustrated that the dishes aren't done. The other person says, oh, I hear you think I'm lazy and I don't do enough. Sometimes that happens. No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, and what you're doing is you guys are going back and forth at a slow pace, trying to keep that heart rate down, trying to keep that blood pressure down, trying to keep the cerebral cortex of our brain engaged and not shut down, and just slowly going through that. I think, I feel, I hear you saying, and you go back and forth, back and forth. And so, just kind of moving on from that, some things that we want to do when we are in this kind of conversation is understand there is a right time to have a debate, there's a right time to have a disagreement, and there's a wrong time to have it. So first you have to check yourself. Are you physically in a position to control yourself and ready to have a difficult conversation? If not, and nobody's life's in danger, wait to have the conversation at a later time. Make sure the TV's off. Make sure distractions. Make sure you're not ready going to bed because sometimes these disagreements go long, and the last thing you want to do is go to bed heated or end up staying up late and tired and having a debate when you're late, when you're tired. Make sure you're not too hungry or the other person's not too hungry. Make sure the other person didn't just get off of work because they're going to be exhausted. Make sure, and I can't stress this enough, you are not having these conversations over the phone unless it's life and death emergency. Definitely no texting, and even calling each other and having these conversations. Wait until you can sit down, TV off, distractions minimized, and you can sit face to face. Any other way eliminates or minimizes the humanness of our conversations. And when it minimizes the humanness, it minimizes the divine, spiritual presence there. Because our humanness is made in the image of God. If we can't see each other's humanness, it's going to be so much harder to see God working in us. Please, under no circumstances, unless life and death, don't bring up issues of disagreement or issues of where there's maybe a high intense conversation through phone, through texting, and through calling, and definitely not social media. Never works. It's awful. Finally, when the conversation's over, when you feel like you have reached understanding, they understand you, they understand them, try to have an action step, right? You don't want to just say, okay, I shared what I felt, you share what you felt. Say the last thing we should say is, what can we do? And use that word we. Not what can you do to fix my problem, right? But what can we do to move forward from this? Oftentimes we get in some conversations and we share a piece and they share their piece and we walk away and nothing changes and we end up having the same conversation. How many times have you had the same conversation of what can we do? And this is a spiritual practice to be able to actually speak to other people who think different than us or people who we perceive are hurting us. To be able to have a conversation is a spiritual practice, because as we begin to understand people and as we help people understand us, we begin to see the depths and diversity of God and God working in our lives and other people's lives. So this is a spiritual practice. If you have any questions or any ideas or any suggestions, let us know. If you like this video and you like some of the practices we're talking about, please hit subscribe below. We hope you guys have a great day and hope you begin practicing some of these ways of having good and meaningful conversation. We'll see you guys later.